Fair use. Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 USC 107.
O Yahweh, open up you my lips, and let my mouth show forth your praise. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputso o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mikaniacha. Kuma, Yahweh, Wayaputso o Yaveka, Wayanusa Misanecha Mikaniacha. Arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yahsharel'S, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying Hallelujah.
Shalom, family, and welcome to Into All Truth. May the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. Ecclesiastes 1. The thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. So we're going to talk about some of the previous technologies, in particular war and AI, that the fallen and their children used in the wars against the Israelites. And why am I doing this? Because, of course, all of this stuff is coming back. I'm also doing it because, for whatever reason, this is never talked about amongst the Israelites, but I'm going to show you an actual guy who does talk about it. He doesn't really talk about being an Israelite or the Most High, but he's a brother, so it'll be nice to see, because frankly, I have no idea why none of the Israelites connect the ether and air technologies and melted cities and all of that kind of thing with Israel spending 400 years here and building America with all of the copper top buildings and cities in America, star forts. But people talk about it, but they don't go, oh, we built it. Everybody's just like the heathen saying, amazing technology, but we don't know who built it. But there were a particular people around enslaved to the four corners of the earth for the last 400 years. I don't know. Connect the dots. We also know that the White House, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. were designed by African American architects and craftspeople. And we know that the 10 tribes in particular built Solomon's temple and built all the palaces for the Egyptians and the high places for Jeroboam and Solomon. And that was actually what the split was about the amount of building they were doing, because it was like they were right back in Egypt building for Egypt. And so hence they went back. So we're going to talk a little bit about this just so you can have it present in your minds. I don't know, why other Israelites don't really talk about it. Either it's not in the forefront of their minds, or they are not going to connect those dots because they're not allowed to. I don't know. But I hope it's not that latter. But anyway, so the book of Enoch says, Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony and beautifying of the eyelids, and all sorts of costly stones and coloring tinctures. And Simjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, and Amoros the resolving of enchantments, and Barkael astrology, and Kakabal the constellations, and Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, and Arakal the signs of the earth, and Shamsael the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. And the men perished, and they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. So these are some scriptures for some context. Anything anybody tells you about, we didn't know about this, it was just discovered recently. They just discovered America. When they got off the ark, they knew nothing about the entire planet, even though in both the Old and New Testament it says Yah divided up lots for the entire earth. So we have to help each other out of this thinking that conscious awareness began when the fallen ones began to teach everybody about the earth. All right? So it's a paradigm shift. I'm saying this because I'm hoping that anytime you look at anything you learn, you say to yourself, when you're looking at scripture, or when someone's talking about a new technology, or when someone's talking about the location of the lands of Israel and the breadth of the earth and the knowledge of it, or the body or health, you say, well, you know what? Our forefathers already knew all of this or dealt with it. You say that every time. And then you will not be thinking like the heathen. If you are following a narrative where you're saying to yourself, oh, this is new, or oh, they didn't know about this, you're thinking like a heathen. So we want you to move into the mind of Yah and the mind of the forefathers, so you can become like the family of Israel and their forefathers, who knew there was nothing new under the sun. Let's get into it. The rule of the four beasts that rose up out of the sea in the vision of Daniel is duplicate. It's twofold, meaning that it happens once for Israel and then it happens once for the Gentiles as they're reaping. And so here is the first time that it happens. And in both instances, the saints are overcome completely. So in this first instance, in Daniel 7:19 through 25, this is the beast. And I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding and dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. So the residue that is stamped is the 1/3 remnant with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spoke very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows, I beheld the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. All right. So what happens is that Hasatan and the beast system of Babylon overcomes the saints prevails against them in verse 21. Until the Ancient of Days comes. Now, the Ancient of Days comes on the clouds first in judgment. The angel of Yahuwah comes on the clouds. That's why the scripture says Yah himself will come on the clouds. Okay? That's the angel of Yahuwah. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So two things are going to happen. The saints are going to be able to judge the nations who oppress them, and then they're going to go possess the kingdom. All right? And it says, and the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and dividing of time. And so in this time, at the very end of the rule of the Gentiles here, it's been the Canaanites really ruling. That's who the SOS is. They're the Canaanites. And so they have gotten the last hour, the last 70 to 100 years to rule. That's really an hour. If you do, I've done the math before. You're going to have to do it yourself if you want to figure it out. I'm not here today to prove that to you, but I suggest if you really want to know, do the math yourself according to prophetic time. A 360-day year is prophetic time because you don't count 4 transitional days of the year. But that's a deep study. These are the things you have to know to do these interpretations. And so when we move on to the metamorphosis of this beast, what we find in Revelation 13 and 1, it could be considered a double prophecy. But what I really think is that this is the judgment of the Gentile churches, because the fourth beast was able to overcome Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those are the 3 kings that it overcame. So the fourth beast is the fourth man. He is the mixed multitude. He is a combination of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Yet he is the fourth man in the sense that the fourth beast is mixed with the fallen angel seed. He mixes that fourth seed in to the sons of Noah. So that's why he's the fourth beast. And so this Revelation 13 and 1, sometimes I used to think this was the same thing, but it is very distinctly different. Revelation 13 and 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. This was and is Babylon, America, Britain, etc. And then continuing on, and I beheld another beast later on coming up. This is all the way in verse 13, coming up out of the earth, which had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke like the dragon. And he did all that the first beast could do before him, and he caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So go back and look at my, Angels Chained in the Euphrates 2-part series to get more details. But basically, what happens is that America is really, it's kind of the 4th or 5th head, the 4th beast, which has a 5th head. And it dies and is resurrected. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth that spoke great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to do 42 months. And he opened his mouth unto blasphemy against Yahuwah Elohim, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over every kindred, tongue, and nation. And so what I believe, as I said, and I can always be wrong. I can always, change my mind as Yah gives more revelation. But I believe this is the persecution of the church. Here we have the breakup of time. In Jeremiah 30:3, we get a good idea of when the time of Jacob's trouble is. And I've gone back and forth on this. So, I can always change my mind again, but for now, this is what I believe that it is. I think it's coming clearer and clearer as the day of Yahuwah draws near. Jeremiah 30:3, for lo, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel, and Yehudah, saith Yahuwah, for I will restore unto them the land that I gave to their fathers, and they shall possess it. Again, these are the words that Yahuwah spoke concerning Israel and concerning Judah. For thus saith Yahuwah, we have heard a terrible voice of fear and not of peace. Demand now, and behold, if a man travail with child. Wherefore do I behold every man with his hands on his loins, as a woman in travail, and all the faces are turned into a paleness. Alas, for this day is great, and none hath been like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, yet he shall be delivered from it. Now it says delivered from it because this is referring to Revelation chapter 12 and the woman clothed with the sun who's about to deliver a child. A lot of people think that scripture was about the birth of Yahusha, but at the time of John the Revelator, this is all of Revelation is the unveiling at the end of time. It's all the mystery and prophecy. So the Savior had already been born and taken up to heaven. So when it talks about the Son being born and taken up to heaven, it means taken up to the Mount of Yah. And eventually, when before the seventh trumpet changed. All right. But so we need to make that distinction. And so that's why it says delivered, because it is the deliverance of Israel. Some call it second Exodus. I don't really care what you call it, but everybody's leaving. In that day, saith Yahuwah Sabaoth, will I break his yoke from off thy neck, meaning Satan's yoke from off your neck, and break thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, meaning Yahsharel, the son who was just born, right? Delivered. But they shall serve Yahuwah Elohim and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. So the Savior is going to come. Israel is going to serve the Savior, but this is the distinction I want you to see here. The time of Jacob's trouble was from the time Israel went to Babylon into captivity after the fall of the temple in 70 AD. And the worst of it really being from in the last 400 years, according to Genesis 15. So why am I talking about all of this? Well, what I wanted to talk to you guys about was I wanted to go into a little bit about the kind of tech and AI wars that Israel used to fight in the past. Okay? They used to fight tech wars in the past. So let's get into the various technologies that were used to defeat Israel, because they had to have an advantage, and it wasn't just the gun.
Now, please remember, Israel, you are kings and priests in Yahushua HaMashiach, and so you must search out these things to see if they be true. But first of all, you consult the Ruach HaKodesh and say, what saith the Spirit of Yah? So a lot of it is theory, and then I am holding it up to the plumb line in the measure, which is the Word. Imagine a utopia of the fallen. Imagine a king situated in the West with all the elites of Greece and Rome and Ham for around 500 years, being served by the 10 tribes of Israel, whose kingdom encompasses the whole earth. He visits this land whom all the kings of the earth are sworn to secrecy to keep hidden. It is Egypt, the West, where the new Babylon and fourth kingdom will be set up for the future, once everyone has forgotten who Israel is and where the West is, and all of the technologies and understanding of the children of the light, the children of Ur of the Chaldees, the children of Israel. It is near the realm of Eden, but also encompassing the whole earth. Prester John and the kings of Edom rule as kings and priests of the earth, while the prince of darkness rules as Prester John, Quetzalcoatl, the king of the desert. He visits his realm in ships, not just seafaring, but airships. It is the age of enlightenment, and he is the prince of the power of the air. This is a realm where he also brings technology, Ashtaroth poles, that light and power the whole earth. This is his 1,000-year reign as Christ, since the destruction of the temple. And this is his helmet of salvation, by which he communicates his will to all who worship him through the air as the prince of the power of the air and the ruler of the overspreading sea, the abomination of desolation. It is Satan, Esau, and the 7 nations' time of rest from Israel and the daily offering. It is the time of Jacob's trouble.
There are many strange signs in the skies today. There were many wars fought against Yahsharel. We always imagined that they were low-tech wars because that's what the controllers have indoctrinated us with. But I'm here to remind you that there is nothing new under the sun, because that's what the word says, and we go by that and nothing else except that which agrees with Yah's word. I have shown by Yahweh's word and other sources in various videos, which I'll tag in this video, that the new world is the old world. There was a great cover-up during the Israelites' world wars against the other nations and resets when this technology was hidden and erased from the world and minds of all nations of the earth, except the elite overseers. Old tech was simply reintroduced to new empires and leaders in exchange for compliance with the fallen. We saw this after World War II in the 40s and 50s. We saw old tech return at the time of the flood reset, when the priests of Shem and Nimrod began to rebuild using ancient tech and craft written on stone monuments exposed after the flood. See my 4 Angels of the Euphrates video for that. Consider technology, quote, and science, quote, to be witchcraft, craftsmanship, or Masonic builder work. Because we are in a time when all of these engines of war will be deployed against us and the entire earth. We will discuss airships, guns, nuclear tech, and lastly, combat technology, or AI warriors in this video, just to give you an idea of the extent of it. Because as Ecclesiastes says, there is nothing new under the sun. And if Yahweh's word says it, that's what it is. Truth.
It is the 4th beast, Quetzalcoatl, who has metal parts as well as 4 human parts are part of him, and he's also the dragon. And it says that this same horn, he will exalt his horn and make war with the Kodashim and prevail against them until the Ancient of Days comes, and judgment will be given to the Kodashim of El Elyon, and then they will possess the kingdom. But the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole ear, and tread it down, and break it into pieces. And he shall speak great things against the Most High, and wear out the saints, and think to change times and laws. And this saint shall be given into his hand, until a time, times, and dividing of times. And Daniel refers to it also. It says, I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river. This is in a prophetic vision. And he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half, when he, Yahuwah, shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, and all these things shall be finished. And so Israel will fall by the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And this is what happened, and is prisoners of war in the four corners of the earth even now. So they are not the people running government, running business, running corporations, running Hollywood, running the banking system. So many engines of war and means were taken up against the children of Israel. And I want you to look closely at these images that you see, because we're going to see how it was done. And like I said, this was for a time, times, and half a time, which I always say began at about the 8th century. However, before that, during the scattering and the fall, huge weapons of war were used against Israel, the actual nation and land. So at the beginning of the scattering, this is what I imagine the weapons of warfare were. Let's take a look at it. So once again, I was looking at all of these mud floods and disasters, and the inheritors that came out of the ruin of these great nations. And as I've said before in other videos, the dead things that come up from out of the sea and the inhabitants thereof. And I began to look at and consider the fact that in Scripture there's, as we've gone over, and I'll go over them here, there are multiple judgments. These disasters on earth would have first of all been caused by Yah. And there's also theories that there were wars with angels, with fallen angels, and wars with the nations who came against Israel, the nations who banded together with this fascia weapon, which is, with the power of the gun. And you see it depicted in many images. And really what it is it's the nations that were confederate and banded together against Israel to defeat Israel and cause the world to forget who they were. And so let's get into some of these theories. And so this is Israel's judgment, Matthew 3:10. And now also the axe is laid unto the root of the tree. Therefore every tree which bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. So this is the judgment upon Israel. 1/3 to the fire, 1/3 to the sword, and 1/3 remnant will remain, because this is the fall of Israel, Ichabod, the destruction of the temple of Israel. Not only the temple, but the people also, their body, their fascia. Husha, the Messiah, sits before the apostles and they ask him, what will be the sign of the end of the world, when he points out the fact that the temple will be completely destroyed, not one stone left upon the other. So that's the end of Israel. This also, in his description in Luke 21, describes the end of the whole world, but it begins with the end of Israel, because Israel will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and they and their land will be trampled down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And the times of the Gentiles are being fulfilled right now. They're ending. And so I want you to consider, as we look at some of these pieces of the earth, these remnants of destruction, I want you to imagine that they were once kingdoms. It's as though Gaudi's architecture prophesies a twisted empire, where it appears there is no plumb line and nothing is flush or true. It's a world where death and the thorny spine of the dragon, the pointed head of a horned devil, rules and reigns. A procession of sad-faced kings mock or cry out in horror, wearing dunce caps in the warped realm of Edom, who is the end of the world. The Sacred Family Church, perhaps the pinnacle of this expression of history, shrieks like an open grave swallowing bones. Gaudi seems to have expressed the true hidden history of Yahsharel. So I want you to consider this twisted architecture and what it is a monument to. This is Petra. This is the land of Esau, Edom, that was destroyed by Yah. I mean, don't these empires look like melted rock? British Isles were separated from the continent, and it says here in the footnotes, accounts are given by our ancient annalists of the Great Lakes in various parts of Ireland having suddenly burst forth in remote times in Ulster 1,000 years before the Christian era. It is said that those lakes were to burst forth, overflowed, and the adjoining plain drowned in its waves. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? More prophecies and fulfillments of disaster. Psalm 97. A fire goeth forth before Yahuwah and burneth up his enemies round about. His lightning enlightened the world. The earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of Yahuwah, at the presence of the whole earth. This is this city in Spain that melted and is basically under a rock that melted over top of it from the heat. So this is, I believe, the power of Yah upon these nations in judgment upon Israel. In Genesis, Yahuwah rained down sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah out of the heavens, and he destroyed the cities and plain, including all of the inhabitants, so that nothing grew on the ground. And even when he descended on Mount Sinai, it was altogether a smoke and a furnace. Now this melted magma stone mountain was actually captured by 4,000 free black Haitian soldiers when they secured Savannah, Georgia. Why did it melt? So what are all these melted ancient cities that have been destroyed all over the world? Ancient cities that have been judged. This is in Assyria. And we already looked at Petra. Hear the word of Yahuwah, ye children of Israel, for Yahuwah hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land, because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of Elohim in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and whoring, they break out, and blood touches blood. Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall be cut off, with the beasts of the field and with the fowls of the heaven, and also the fishes of the sea shall be taken away. So because of blood breaking out against blood, whoring after strange women and strange gods. So after the glory of Yahuwah had departed from the temple of Israel, it was as Yah promised, my face also shall I turn from them, and they shall pollute my secret place, for robbers shall enter into it and defile it. And when therefore you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. So they polluted the holy temple. They removed the 10 tribes and the southern kingdom off to America, which is the true Greece, and also, Russia and stuff. Yahuwah used
his own weapons of judgment against Yahsharel. But here's some other weapons that may have been used.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
This is what Oppenheimer expressed after dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But is it also a warning to the West and Babylon, to the king who thought he was too powerful? Oppenheimer studied at least 8 of the Veda texts and found the Bhagavad Gita and claimed they were very easy to understand and quite marvelous, and was really taken by the charm and general wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. Oppenheimer also is quoted to have said, "Access to the Bhagavad Gita is the greatest privilege this century may claim." This text was highly sought after and respected by the creator of this nuclear bomb. Oppenheimer would carry a copy of this around with him everywhere he went, and he would hand them out as gifts to all of his friends. That's how much he loved this book. Oppenheimer was fourth man-ish, not all Japheth, because they're really the fourth man, a mix of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and fallen seed. The use of nuclear weapons against Japan in 1945 constituted a war crime by any objective measure, according to this article by Taylor C. Nocase. You can look it up and read it. The atomic bombings of Japan were based on lies. On the 78th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Japan, we should remember that deploying the bomb wasn't necessary to win the war. U.S. policymakers were aware of the fact, yet they pressed on, thereby authoring the atrocity that launched the nuclear age. There is considerable evidence to suggest that Japan was already defeated before the atomic bombs were dropped. General Douglas MacArthur and Dwight D. Eisenhower, along with Admiral William Leahy, these later leaders opposed the use of the atomic bombs against Japan because they felt it was completely unnecessary. In 1946, bombing survey confirmed the remarkable success of the bombing campaign, supporting the assessment that Japan would have surrendered prior to November 1st, 1945, the date of a proposed invasion of Kyushu, without the need for atomic weapons or Soviet entry into the conflict. See, the Americans did not want the Soviet Union to have to enter, and thereby America would not get credit for winning the war. And this leads to the question as to why the bomb was dropped on the Japanese, who were Javan, or the Javanese of the land of Japheth. Japheth has a lot of prophecies connected to and aligning with true Israel. Remember, the Japanese had the Shem Morai, who taught them to wield the sword of Yah. Elijah and the Isles of Elijah, which I believe include Japan, belong to him. The ships of Tarshish will also bring Israel from afar and repatriate them to the land. It is suspected that Eliezer of Damascus is kind of a combo of Caesar, being the key elements in his name, and Isles of Elijah. Eliezer. These indicate he may have been a Javetic servant of Abraham. He was dwelling in Damascus, land of Shem, but also Madai, Japheth. He's also Chittim, however, the Romans and the Greeks on the dark side. While giving a lecture at Rochester University during the question and answer period, a student asked him a question and Oppenheimer gave a mysterious answer. The student asked, was the bomb exploded on Alamogordo during the Manhattan Project, the first one detonated? Oppenheimer said, yes, in modern times, of course. So was there a more ancient time when this bomb could have been detonated? Rajasthan Mohenjo-daro is an archaeological site in the Larkana district, Sindh, Pakistan. Built 2500 BC, it was the largest settlement of the ancient Indus Valley civilization and one of the world's earliest major cities, contemporaneous with civilizations of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Minoan Crete, and Norte Chico. Northwestern India's writings from a great many years prior appear to contain what could be deciphered as precise portrayals of atomic blasts, particularly identical to the one in Nagasaki in World War II. Take the incomparable Sanskrit epic from India called the Mahabharata. It recounts the fate and devastation with entries that appear to precisely portray the impacts and repercussions of an atomic war. Enormous blasts, more brilliant than 1,000 suns, were recorded, just as cadavers consumed to the point that they were unrecognizable. There were likewise numerous different sections fitting the cutting-edge portrayal of an atomic assault. As indicated by this legend, individuals who endured the disaster lost their hair and fingernails a short time later, while nourishment supplies were polluted. This all matches our comprehension of the impacts of radiation harming and radioactive defilement in the fallout of a nuclear blast. In the territory of Rajasthan in northern India, a layer of exceptionally radioactive cinder was found close to Jodhpur, which was sufficient to warrant an examination. Davenport, this is the archaeologist, additionally clarified that what was found at Mohenjo-daro emulates precisely the impacts of the fallout that occurred in Hiroshima and Nagasaki amid the 20th century. Here are 2,400-year-old ancient bunkers and nuclear war shelters found in India. You see the melted stone, but also the entrance. The myth of Ramayana of Valmiki documents this nuclear event, possibly located in this city. It was decided that Ravagna had gotten too powerful. He worshipped Shiva, who was Abaddon, the god of destruction. They used many energy weapons that exhibited great powers of destruction, including energy swords, and one was compared to the sun, turning into 50 even more brighter suns with a magnificent blast, a nuclear blast that can vitrify mountains and stone. Is it not prophesied that the fourth beast would worship the god of war? This is a vitrified fort in Scotland on the right. It was a defense port. Forts were built and sealed with heat vitrified stone as a way of building, but also destroyed that way. So this is a vitrified fort in England in 1829 on the right. And then these are just stones in the middle that are vitrified in a fort in France in the middle. And so these are lists of many vitrified forts and buildings in Europe. There were many electrified hand weapons and other kinds of weapons in all of these Greek, Norse cultures. You can pause to read if you like. If these people had electrified hand weapons, how electrified would the sword of truth of Yahsharel'S been? All of these got power from the ether. What was Yehuda and the 12 tribes of Yahsharel getting from praising and glorifying Yahweh in the heights of heaven and eternity itself? And Yahusha, the very sword of truth, the sword of praise.
Prester John, the Tartarian Khan, Septimus Severus, Lucius. So this is an image of Lucius, as in Lucifer, Septimus Severus. In other words, of the 7 nations that sever the 10 tribes from the 7 spirits of Yah, embodied, as I've shown you before, in the 7 sisters, or the 7 stars of the Big Dipper, and their land. Lucius Septimus Severus, and Lucius is often associated with the Christ, was born in Libya. This is him, young man and middle-aged, and he was born in the Roman province of Africa, in Leptis Magna. He lived to be about 60, ruling from 193 to 211. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. So these are the 10 nations who are ruled by the 7 nations. And here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains upon which the woman sits. So who is the woman? The woman is Babylon, and it is North America. The dragon described is not an actual beast, but a nation of people, is what is said in Daniel, specifically the nation of Edom, Esau, that will claim ruling power over various parts of the world, stemming from European countries. And what the scripture says is that the tail of the dragon, so Esau is the dragon of the 7 nations wearing 7 crowns, right? And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars from heaven and did cast them to the earth.
And this is him ruling from Ethiopia as Prester John, as well as Mansa Musa, and then the Holy Roman Emperors from Charles V, the Habsburgs, the Hohenzollerns, and the Pope. For Esau Edom to gain sovereignty over Yahsharel, they had to use some pretty insane AI technology to fight these ground wars, which we're going to get into in a minute. I want you to hold on until the end. We're going to have a brother explain some of this technology to you. But before we do that, we're going to advance towards some of the technologies that they used in the late 1700s and the American World Wars to subdue the Hebrews. Let's keep going.
So we have the Jamaican Maroon Rebellions, the uprisings in Jamaica, then the Haitian Revolt, and then we have the War of Independence alongside the 7 Years' War. Then right after that, the Canadian Race Riots, and then Haiti gets its freedom by fighting against Napoleon Bonaparte. And then we have the Louisiana Uprising, and we have the Castle Hill Convict Rebellion in Australia. And then in 1814, we have the burning of the White House, the Nat Turner and other French rebellions in the South, the War of Independence and bushfires and war in Australia. Then we have the Montreal Fire with Marie-Joseph Angelique. And then we have the Civil War, in which Albert Pike sets up the KKK and plans World War I, II, and III. And then we have Paul Bogle leading rebellions in Morant Bay. Tewodros War with Britain, Russians defeated in the Crimean War. Then we have the Chicago Fire, the Great Seattle Fire, then the Spanish-American War, and the Philippines. And then the Smithsonian is set up to document, qualify, quantify, and write history. And smite the son of the Eon, the end sign, which is Israel. And after all of this war and confusion, the inheritors, or the pseudo-inheritors, the dead things that come up from the sea, come in.
Here's some of the technology they used to do this. According to this article, somebody by the name of Robert Smalls, a planter from Charleston, South Carolina, delivered a ship to the United States Navy. Robert Smalls was a pilot on May 13th, 1862, when he seized the CSS Planter. But this is very curious because he is called a pilot. I thought ship's captains I thought pilots piloted airships. Well, you are right about that. I thought ship's captains piloted airships. Well, according to books like Airships Past and Present, even as early as the 1800s and perhaps earlier, people piloted airships, including Napoleon, to win wars in Africa. The Development of Military Ballooning, page 139. In 1859, Napoleon III procured a large silk Montgolfier from Italy holding about 28,500 cubic feet. Now, obviously, this is a balloon. It was handed over to a man named Nadar, who had done much photographic work from a balloon, and he made an ascent at Castiglione, accompanied by Goddard, the balloon manufacturer. Now, it says balloons were largely employed during the American Civil War, when Professor Lowe of Washington went to the seat of war and placed himself under the orders of General McClellan. A man named Lamontagne went up in one of the balloons and drifted away in the direction of the enemy's camp. After making his observations, he rose higher in the air and found a current which brought him back again. An aeronaut named Allen went up in the other balloon and reported telegraphically to headquarters. In 1866, balloons were used in the war between Brazil and Paraguay. This book and many more relate that Napoleon dropped bombs in North Africa, and bombs were also dropped in Crimea during the Crimean Wars. It is these ether points on the copper tops of buildings where these balloons were recharged.
Built the White House and designed Washington, the city, and burned down the White House. It's not surprising to find they also did other strange things. All these special technologies that were created. Even a black man is given credit for designing the light itself when there had been lights previously. And what this all seems to be about is, as I've said before, it's Esau and Jacob. And Esau is trying to sharpen Jacob for his own purpose and for his own hands. So do I believe this was a constant war from 70 AD onwards? Yes. And what is disguised as fire or flood is often judgment from Yah or warfare from the other nations. And I do believe that people were put in asylums and children were put in orphanages. Apparently there were a bunch of New York riots over the Johns Hopkins orphanages set up in New York to recondition and reprogram everybody. But I still believe there was a phase of chattel slavery, of course. Many people had to rescue their children from orphanages, but they were also just fleeing from war and theft of their children. Just like in Nova Scotia, there was an orphanage that was charged with a lot of abuse. Because I believe the plantation and the prison industrial complex and the education system have been the ultimate asylum, orphanage, and device of mind control for the African diaspora. The indentured servitude, people packed like sardines on ships from Europe in the cold, coming in the spring or in terrible weather. A lot of people died, a lot of children died. So they weren't just a bunch of happy, noble slaves. And so with that, the other nations were able to come in and live and have their hour with the beast. But now the times of the Gentiles are over. And by this, I mean the fallen angel seed, because I strongly suspect Japheth, Ham, and Shem were the brown indigenous people of the earth. And that these are all the indigenous people of the earth. And this was the time of the grafting in of the fallen seed. But I'm not 100% on this.
It's pretty clear from the images of all the fires and explosions that many bombs were dropped from above, destroying the cities and the monuments that were built by Yahsharel, and I believe even the Tartarians, even Japheth, the true Japheth. But let's take a look at New York City in 1929 as seen from the view of one of these airships. So you can see that there were actually high-rise cities that were built well, even hundreds of years before 1929, from the sturdiness of these structures that you'll see.
Video shot in 1929 of the Zeppelin. 1929, before the crash, literal crash of the Zeppelin. And the so-called economic crash, basically a grand reset. So if the American Civil War was April 12th, 1961 to 1965, what we're going to see here, these airplanes and all of these visions of the Zeppelin, and here is the city of New York, the very city of New York in 1929, would mean so that it was exactly 60 years. It would have taken them 60 years to build New York with slaves. Tell me that the city of New York wasn't already here. Take a look at this imagery of the city of New York in 1929. The Gentiles did not build New York City. The people who have been there since 700 BC, who came in, the time of Alexander the Great, 500 BC, and were also sent to America since 70 AD, and literally in the last 500 years built these cities, built the city of New York. Look at it.
Yes, people, 5,000 men, women, and children are sitting on newspapers in the park. The streets are packed. All available parking places have been taken. Deafening cheers rise up when the Zeppelin appears on the horizon. But when the airship flies over, the thousands standing to watch are silent. Drivers are breaking all the rules, putting the brakes on and climbing onto the roofs of their automobiles. The police are trying to keep everything under control. They issue warnings and blow their whistles, but no one pays any attention. Pretty soon, the officers give up, shrug their shoulders, and turn their eyes up to the sky to join the watchers. Yes, people, New York has gone crazy.
These types of airships were used, like I said, extensively in the Crimean War, and they were used against the Yahsharel'S. Black Russians. The Crimean War is very important because it was when the Russians lost their empire. It was the beginning of the end, and they were actually very much supporting the African diaspora in their own global world war. The Crimean War was happening around the time of the Civil War, the Ethiopian War, and the Boer War in South Africa. Please watch my Hebrew World Wars video. It has a White House burning down on it. So we're going to backtrack a bit in history. to see how the Tartars began to take over the West. But I can understand the European chroniclers seem to take over from the Byzantine historians. The Byzantine historians would be the Yahsharel'S, and they were mixing with Japheth, all right? And so we see that. So here's one of the chroniclers back in the day, in about the 1100s, Saint Nestor the chronicler, okay? So you see he's black, all right? And they talk about Prester John, the Nestor, right, who is Ethiopia king, ruling in Ethiopia, and in fact all over the world, in the hidden world of the West as well. And so along come these other chroniclers who then begin to chronicle time. And so here's another Nestor, the chronicler. And so we see this guy is being depicted as looking kind of more Caucasian. All right, and so these were, again, acquainted with the Byzantine chroniclers. And then there's this Nestor who is very popular today. Now, the Mongolian Empire invaded the Russian Empire on December 21st in about the 1200s, okay? Through Genghis Khan or Chenghis Khan, right? Because they're Canaanites. So they look white, but the Chinese are also Canaanites. And this was Chenghis Khan, the Khazarian, who ruled the Mongolian Empire from 1206 to 1227 AD. And the language of the Russians through the Slavic language of the Russian Empire, which is now Belarus, Ukraine. So the Ukrainians are Canaanites, all right, mixed with Japheth. And they gave birth to the Germanic bloodline in Russia. This is around the 1700s. Now, these were called the Muscovites, and Elon Musk is a Muscovite. These are not true Gentiles, they are Tartarians, Canaanite mixtures. And this is why the Afrikaans insist on saying that they are indigenous to Africa, because they are the Canaanites who always wanted the land of Africa, the Muscovites included. So this is when the Canaanites are beginning to take over Europe. And this is Ivan, this is at the time of Ivan the Terrible. Okay, he was Grand Prince of Moscow. You see how black he looks? He looks like an Ethiopian because he's Edom. And probably a mixture of the 10 tribes, right? Because Edom likes to mix the seed. So he was proclaimed the Grand Prince of Moscow in the Rurik dynasty in 1533, but then they were taken over by the Crimean Tartars, okay? Invaded by them. All right? And so this is why when we talk about the Crimean War, you can see the Crimeans, they look, during the Crimean War, this was a major global world war. And you can see that in these illustrations from that war, you can see that we look at Andrew Tate here. We know his father was an agent for the American government, but nonetheless, they represent the seed of Israel in that northern kingdom, and that's why they're hated, okay? Because their father is the seed of Israel, right? And but you can see very well here, they look like the black Russians. Look at some of these Russians here. Black, they look very black. This is during the Crimean War. This guy looks kind of mixed. This guy looks thoroughly Negro. Him too. Look here. Notice how they put on these big hairy hats, right? As though they're covering something up. Okay? And so, like I said, it was a very significant global war. Here, Russia is financing the Boer War, the Ethiopian War, American Civil War. The Boers were fighting against the British. The British were fighting against the Ethiopians. So this was, even though these Boers were Canaanites, they were not the British. The British are Canaanites as well. And so when we look at Crimea and the Crimean War, it's very interesting to note that the dispute was over routes from the Black and Caspian Seas into the Mediterranean. And you can see a lot of these soldiers, if you zoom in, they look very kind of mixed. All right. It was a military conflict fought from October 1853 to 1856, which Russia lost to an alliance of France, the Ottoman Empire. So Ottoman, that's the Turks, and Taman, that is Esau. So Esau mixing in with the Gentiles. The United Kingdom and Piedmont, Sardinia. The immediate cause of the war involved rights of Christian minorities in Palestine, which was part of the Ottoman Empire. And it was also over these sea routes. So it was a territorial war over the Black and Caspian Seas into the Mediterranean. So you see that's a very clear shipping and trading route that would allow the Gentiles to disperse over the whole world. Right next door to the Russians, right next door to Japheth. And so you'd have a lot of Black people in that area, and we've already shown that in the pictures. The northern kingdom and even southern kingdom scattered into Ur of the Chaldees, into Shem's other area of land, Western Europe, Shemaria or Sumeria. All right, so this is, as you can see, these are all Black Israelites, and this is these beautiful monastery pictures, the Veronet Monastery. And it is here in Romania. We already discussed a kind of Alexander the Great, Lucius Septimus Severus, who came from North Africa. First captivity was the captivity of the 10 tribes by Tiglath-Pileser John, who was called Salamancer or Solomon Esau, a type of Solomon, just like how they had types of Dawid. And so this beast with the 7 heads took captive the 10 tribes of Israel, and this is when they made their covenant with death. And so when it discusses his conquests, of course, like I said, he was born in North Africa. He defeated Niger, and he defeated the Albans, the people of Gaul. And then he consolidated his rule over the western provinces, Mr. Severus. And he was successful against the Persian Empire, so he destroyed the Persians. Campaigned in Mauritania and Africa, so he took over Tripoli, all of those lands. And then he went to Britain in AD 209, and that includes Scotland. And so this is, even before this, we had Alexander the Edomite descendant. Now, if you go into my Negro to Bianco series, you'll see like this, the dog-headed people warring against Israel, the giants warring against Israel, the Gentiles warring against Israel to take their land in Germany, even those, the Saracens coming up, the Isaurians coming up to take over the lands of Israel, Northern Europe, basically. And there were multiple incursions. The Jews were removed from Russia in the 1890s, but in Hamburg 1730. So you see this connection with Russian wars, right? Brandenburg 1573, Bavaria 1553, Spain 1462, England 1422, France 1403, Italy 1342. And of course, we have the history of the Inquisition, where 400 to 800,000 people were removed from Spain. And of course, the Germans, their land was taken by the Gentiles. Watch my Negro to Bianco series. Now, if you look at a lot of these people in these drawings, this is very much whitewashed and faded out and recolorized. These people, a lot of them have kinky hairs like afros, or they're mixed. Their hair is all curly, because this is Israel, and Israel mixing in with the Gentiles and the fall of Israel. And this is actually an image of King Charles VIII and the wars. This is the fall of Jacob. by the overwhelming flood, and this is Esau overcoming him and him sinking into the flood of nations. And this is how the Gentiles and the fallen angel seed slayed his sons and his children. And the crown was given to Esau, Edom, and the Gentiles. So what does Yahusha say when the apostles ask him about the time of the end? But then you shall hear of wars and commotions, but be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. And he said unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, famines and pestilences, and fearful signs, and great signs shall there be from heaven. So this is one of the third signs we're seeing. But before all these things, so this is the key thing, they shall lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and to prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And so when is that time of Jacob's trouble? Exactly.
Pack your bags and prepare to leave. The siege is about to begin. For this is what the Most High said suddenly. I will fling out all you who claim this land. I will pour great troubles upon you, great troubles upon you, and at last you will feel my anger. So severe and my grief is great. My wound is severe and my grief is great. My sickness is incurable, but I can handle it. My home is gone. My home is gone. No one is left to help me rebuild. My children have been taken away, and I will never see them again.
All right. And so here are the signs. And they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So this is the people and the land will be trampled. And so this is why it is said, Yahuwah has confirmed his words which he spoke against us and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil, for under the whole of heaven hath not been done as has been done upon Jerusalem. Now Jerusalem is not just the land, it's the people. And so that's Daniel 12:12. And so the use of this, something called the fascia, was the beginning of the nation's war against Israel. And some say, oh, this was the slings and arrows of the enemy, and there was some special weapon of warfare that they had. And you see it here with Lincoln, you see it here with the Nazis, with the military, and you also see it with technology, communications technology. And it does include weapons like guns. The gun is basically the fascia. But it's also the battle axe, the axe that was set to the root of the tree to destroy Israel. And it's very easily characterized in Aesop's fable. See, Esau's fables.
And so this is the story where a father had a family of sons who were forever quarreling among themselves. No words could he say did the least good. So he cast about in his mind for some very striking example that should make them see that discord would lead them to misfortune. And so whatever the case, he summoned his sons around him to give them some parting advice, and he ordered them to bring in a bundle of sticks and said to his eldest son, break it. And the son strained and strained, but with all his efforts was unable to break the bundle. The other sons also tried, but none succeeded. Untie the bundle, said the father, and each of you take a stick. When they had done so, he told them, now break, and each stick was easily broken. Sticks in a bundle can't be broken, but sticks taken singly can be easily broken. The same applies to people. And so this is how Esau defeated Jacob. According to scripture, a nation divided cannot stand. So they furthered the division between the tribes, the northern and southern kingdom. And Esau and all the other nations banded together to defeat Israel. Psalms 83:5, saying, come, let us erase them as a nation. May the name of Israel be remembered no more, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against you. Scripture also says, bind the strong man in the New Testament so you can gain access to his house. So of course, Samson was a strong man, and who was used to do that? Delilah. The women of other nations were used to seduce Israel, the men of Israel, away to other gods and into captivity. Behold, a people come from the north, a nation shall be stirred up from the end of the earth, and they shall lay hold on the bow and the spear. And the people is fierce and have not mercy, and their voice is as a roaring sea, and they shall array themselves for war against thee, as on fire on horses and chariots, O daughter of Zion. For out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which will make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove and they shall depart, both man and beast. So this is the weapon that the nations used against Israel to take Israel captive and into slavery, because they were too strong spiritually. So they had to use this fascia that gave them military weapons and gave them communications technology to overcome Israel, who had a great communication with each other. And so this is what happened. But the fascia was also a weapon of warfare against the physical body of Israel, for consumption and disease. And so Jeremiah says, behold, waters come up from the north and shall become a sweeping torrent, and shall sweep away the land and its fullness in the city, and them that dwell in it. And men shall cry, and men that dwell in the land shall howl at the sound of the rushing, at the sound of his hoofs, at the rattling of his chariots, at the noise of his wheels. The fathers turn not to their children because of the weakness of their hands, in the day that is coming to destroy Philistines, Tyre and Sidon, and all the rest of their allies, for Yahuwah will destroy the remaining inhabitants of the islands. Baldness is come upon Gaza, Ascalon is cast away, and the remnant of Anakim. And of course, there's also these other references to waters overflowing. And even in America, the waters you saw were where the prostitute is seating, and all the peoples and multitudes are many nations and tongues. And Yah will sweep away this covenant with death. And so this happens, first of all, being the natural disasters, and also these floods in all of these places where the African diaspora was. Port Royal, Jamaica has a legend of a flood there. It was once known for, quote, swashbuckling pirates. But through a devastating earthquake in 1692, they lost around 2/3 of this old city, which today, the submerged portion of Port Royal, is an archaeological treasure trove in Jamaica. So this is a sunken, submerged city, which is also a common thing. And there was the Great Flood of 1889 in Johnstown, that killed over 2,000 people. What is this all about? Notice people are dying too. Flooding. Again, it's the theme of the overwhelming flood that permits the inheritors to then begin to come into the cities and unearth everything and take over. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is this really about? So we have the creator warring against the diaspora and the people. But is there also another kind of war going on here that is revealed by what we see in the midst of all of these disasters? Now, I still take this with a grain of salt because a lot of this stuff I think is photoshopped. But still, think about it. This is a lot of destruction beyond natural disasters. So let's take a look at that. There should be several fires, well, a lot of them that should pique your interest. Starting with, just in no particular order, the Great Seattle Fire. The conflagration lasted for less than a day, burning through the afternoon into the night and during the summer. And the avenue was set on fire by heated glue and gasoline, which spread over the floors. However, these buildings are all brick. So how did the fire start? The firefighting group or chief was out of town at the time of the fire. Okay? And so it was June 5th, 1889, when this building burned down. And apparently the floor was covered with wood chips, but how does brick burn? Also, the Chicago fire that burned Chicago from October 8th to 10th in 1871 and killed approximately 300 people, destroying 3.3 miles of city and over 1,700 structures, and left more than 100,000 residents homeless. Again, this is brick burning. How does brick burn? It seems that Chicago was just a doomed city. Why are all these people surrounding this building and watching brick burn? And there's the Great Montreal Fire of 1852. And it began on July 8th and left as many as 10,000 people homeless and destroyed almost half of the city's housing. The fire occurred at a time when the city's recently constructed reservoir, located at the site of today's St. Joseph Square, was drained and closed for repairs. The first fire broke out in a tavern on St. Lawrence Boulevard and spread quickly, and fanned by strong winds and a hot, dry summer weather. The fire started at St. Lawrence from a wooden house, which was typical at the time. There was a lot of fires in wooden houses around brick buildings, and it spread from the block from Saint Denis. And of course, Marie Joseph Angelique, a Portuguese black slave woman, was tried and convicted of setting the fire of her owner's home. And that was in most of what is called Old Montreal. Now, also in Australia, there were bushfires, many bushfires in Australia, and people fleeing. However, the first Europeans arrived in 1788 in Sydney. And somehow there's a connection between them and these fires. And of course, if we start looking at wars, we are going to find that in the War of 1812, there was a huge fire in 1814, the burning of the White House. And they talk about how it was British loyalists, but we can be pretty sure, especially from this depiction, that it was black British loyalists who burned down and built that White House. But I believe these balloons were used to bomb things. I also believe the same energy weapons they're using today were used to create floods and fires, as I showed you guys in my video about the Chinese sun, the artificial sun.
and all kinds of lying signs and wonders. And so these are being used again.
With a temperature of 15 million degrees Celsius, the core of the Sun is the hottest place in the solar system. In 2022, Chinese scientists broke this record with their own artificial sun. This artificial sun used nuclear fusion reaction to achieve a very high temperature. It sustained 52 million degrees Celsius for more than 17 minutes. Scientists are trying to harness the energy of nuclear fusion.
It looks in this particular imagery very much like a mouth with fire coming out of it. It's as though they're trying to imitate the sword of fire, the stream of fire, the fiery sword of judgment, or the law, or the Torah going forth to judge. And now for the finale. What is the final weapon? What are these swords, these electrified swords that were used? Well, we're going to give you some clues here, and then we're going to get the answer from the brother about the type of armor and the types of swords that were deployed against Yahsharel through AI. This is from the book Astronaut Gods and the Maya. Why am I showing this to you? I'm showing this to you because I want you to notice the similarities between the picture on the left-hand side and the picture that is behind it. So you see a man with some kind of a costume on, some kind of a helmet, and you see balls flying around them in both instances. And so you look at the bottom left-hand corner close up, you can see there's a man inside of a costume with a head. And what you see in the image to the right of it, the image of the larger picture, is you see there seems to be some kind of a tube connected to the helmet. All right. And I want you to remember that as you look at these images, these more recent sci-fi images behind it, the image of the night. And so what it says here is that in Guatemala, not far from the Pacific coast, is the small village of El Baal. And I found the village's main attraction in an opened, wind and weather-beaten wood shed near a sugar factory. The El Baal Monument number 27, as the stele is officially known, is 2.54 meters tall and 1.47 wide. Decades ago, it was discovered by chance in a forest clearing and left here. The seal shows a dominating figure with arms bent and hands resting on hips. The hands seem to be protected by boxing gloves, and in each hand is a tennis ball-sized ball. Thoroughly modern, the feet of the figure are in boots that reach the knees and cover the knickerbocker-like pants. A wide belt separates the pants from the close-fitting top. So far, though remarkable, this figure was dressed in the fashion of his time, but the helmet, which covers the entire head, is perplexing. Like a diving outfit, it has large coils on the shoulders. From the helmet, a tube extends to a box similar to a tank on the back. When observed more closely, one recognizes a spy hole in the helmet, and behind it, the nasal catheter and left eye of the helmet wearer. So I want you to keep this in mind. 2 Esdras 6:41 says, "Upon the second day thou madest the spirit of the firmament, and commandest it to part asunder, and to make a division betwixt the waters." Note, the power of the ether in the firmament is spiritual, activated from heaven by praise, or activated from Satan by tech or witchcraft. Maccabees and Jasher really document how the Yahsharel'ites used glory and praise to war. But let's see how the enemy used the firmament and ether to war.
Now, I've been doing some research, and we've always been fascinated with nights our entire lives. but we never questioned their suits of armor at all until now. What I stumbled across was basically lining up with the fact that reptilians have been working alongside of elites for a very, very long time. And when I cap this video off, you're going to see exactly what I see. Now, I did some searching and I came across this here. Now, read this. Look how it says, knights never went out of their castle without their armor. Knight servants had to pour water inside their suits. That was apparently due to it being impossible for knights to go to the bathroom. So you're going to tell me they were pouring water in their suits to clean out their suits? It also says that they always stay hidden in their castles. They had to eat through their armor. Some of them slept in armor. Why would you do that? Unless you're like a reptile and you don't want anybody to see your face, or you're an entity who doesn't want to be noticed. Then I stumbled across this. And you see how you got the knight's armor, you see the shield in the back, and then you see the person's body, and then you kind of see this worm thing coming out. What the is that? And basically, what I'm trying to say is, what we think were knights, were they really reptilian entities inside the armor? More like this. Because the armor doesn't make any sense, and their behavior doesn't make any sense. They can't take their armor off, their servants can't see them without their armor. You need to pour water inside of it. Why would you need to do that? But I do know if you do have a reptile or a pet or something like that, what do they tell you to put in the tank? They tell you they put some water in there, don't they? Now we're just going to look at the armor. I always just thought the armor was odd only because it looks like there's metal strips that would obstruct your vision, would it not? I look here at this armor, and I made sure not to find AI or anything else. You see how this is in a museum, meaning this is official. They went and they found. Look at the armor. Look at the slit on this guy's. I'm sorry, but if I'm fighting you, would you want to fight with that on? Would you want to go to battle with that on? Could you go to battle? Could you even see out of that? Think about that for a second. You can't see. There's a slit right here for your eyes to come out all the way out here. How are you even seeing? If I do a swipe or something, you can't see it come up. How are you blocking that? It's not adding up. Just take a really close look. Look at the slit in that eye. Like, if somebody ducks down, you can't see them. Let's be honest. It's not really logical. Take a look at this one. Take a look at that. You can't see it. You can't see what is going on here. This is official knight's armor. This is in a museum. What is going on here? It looks like a torture device. But you're telling me a human being is chilling in there, and they can see and fight? This is supposedly the knight's armor of Maximilian II. Look at the feet. the helmet. They didn't put it on backwards. No. It's on the right way. It's like it's not even a 1/4 inch wide, the slit. You can barely see the slit in the helmet. How are you fighting in that? How are you walking in that? And for those of you who think I'm a skeptic, then what is this? And what is this depiction here? Let me show you something else, because they always show you through the looking glass. Do we remember him from the Game of Thrones? This thing that we saw in the show and nobody questioned or asked any questions about. It was just this creepy entity that was just following her around, doing her bidding. And it don't look anywhere near human. Watch this. Just stabs Money right in the chest. He don't even move. Lift him up with one hand and just snap his neck like he ain't nothing. So you have that scene when dude just stabs him in the chest. He don't even move. He don't even budge like it's nothing, right? And then listen to this scene, how they describing dude.
Introduces the newest member of the King's Guard. He doesn't refer to him as the Mountain anymore either. He now goes by the name of Sir Robert the Strong. The other members of the King's Guard notice that whoever is inside the massive armor no longer eats any food, drinks any water or wine, nor does he go to the bathroom. They also can't see inside of the helmet. In the very last chapter of the last book, things begin to get even more ominous about the character. Mace Tyrell says, "Where did this man come from? Why have we never heard this name before? He does not speak, he will not show his face, and he is never seen without his armor. Do we even know for a certainty that he is even a knight? We do not even know if the man is alive."
We do not know if the man is even alive. I'm starting to think there's a lot of truth to this. Because if this isn't true, and this isn't true, is somebody going to explain to me how these motherfuckers see? None of this make no sense. Make it make sense. Unless we're going to convince ourselves that this, and this is good, great headgear for visual combat in battle and asks absolutely no questions. The same way everybody watched this entire show, saw this reptilian monster, and asked no questions. But when the eyes are blind, the mind can't see.
Again, a knight is wearing this, and he can't see. That's the front of his mask. We're going to do a lot of critical thinking here in this video. Take a look at that. This right here is a conducting cage. That's what this is. Because they were conducting energy and projecting energy and using these as Faraday cages. Let me show you. Pay attention. He's got a cage on his head, metal cage. This is just like those ether collecting antennas. This has collected ether. Now he's using a sword to extract and harness the energy. Look, that's how they used swords. This is why nights are covered in metal. Look, these weapons weren't used the way you think they were used. That's crystal. Crystal. These items are made for electricity. Look at that. Look at that. Look at how thin these are. This is for energy projection. This is a conducting suit with an antenna on the top. So these suits combined with the ether antennas, and you get an energy projection weapon. We just never wanted to ask no question why this guy was clad in metal from top to bottom, covering up everything. Until now. Let's take a look, shall we? Silicon is a key mineral found in hair, undoubtedly contributing to its antenna ability. Crystals have the power to receive and transmit energy waves. Let's take a look at these weapons. Let me ask you a question. It's the medieval times. This guy is covered in heavy metal, right? What are you doing with your crystal hilted sword? Why would you have a blunt end that is used in battle to bash a dude in the head? This dude's wearing heavy metal. Why would you make it out of crystal glass? Why would you make the hilt out of crystal glass? Unless it's not a physical sword, but made to harness and project energy. Remember, y'all, they do not want us thinking about free energy or spirit. They want us stuck in the physical realm. That's why you don't know about this information. Let's go a little bit further. Let's just take a look, because we're critical thinking now. Let's take a look. Do those look like those are penetrating anybody's armor? No. Does that look like a slashing device of... No. Actually, what does it look like? It looks like the top of all the cathedrals. Does it not? It looks like it harnesses energy. Does it not? Look at this. Notice the gloves are also metal. Why would your gloves be solid metal? Unless you still wanted to be able to conduct energy through your weapon. Why would you design a hilt of this magnitude when anybody that understands energy knows, look at that. That's an energy amplifier. That's why it's spiraling and doing all the rounded. Look at this. Look at this right here. It comes out, goes up, comes back down, comes back, goes down that way. This is for energy. Look at how thin that is. Are you going to sword battle with that? No, you are not. When I saw this the first time, I thought to myself, man, that's a silly idea to make a sword like that out of crystal. This is a crystal sword with a crystal hilt. And like at first glance, you'll look, and it don't look like much, but look at that. It's crystal, which I just showed you is made to harness and project energy. Look closely at the intricate placement. Look at the balance of that. Look at the spacing, gapping. Anybody that knows anything about spark plugs, energy, firing, you know everything needs to be gapped just right. Look at all these little holes and intricate sequences. This is for energy. Look at how beautifully woven that is. If that guy was doing what he was doing with the Faraday cage with just a piece of metal. Could you fucking imagine what this motherfucker right here do? Just in case you guys were wondering what that was, it's a crystal hilt Chinese bronze sword studded with turquoise and gold inlaid. I just said gold inlaid. Yes, 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 yes. That means these lines you're seeing here, all through the crystal, are being gold. Yeah, you could take this motherfucker right here, point it at a nigga, and blast that motherfucker to the other side of the goddamn planet. Facts. I just want y'all to stop thinking about physical things. Stop thinking that we're physical beings. Stop thinking about swords.
So is MAGA, are the witches going to use all this AI tech and merge it with human flesh, and the iron won't mix with clay to try and devise these kinds of homunculus chimera warriors again? Is this what they're trying to do with the children? Is this what they're going to do with various other ingestibles that go into the body? Let me know your thoughts, family. But here is your hope. What will be the power of Yahsharel when Yah returns? Zechariah 9:13 through 15. When I have bent Yehudah for me, filled the bow with Ephraim, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man. And Yahuwah shall be seen over them. His arrow shall go forth as lightning, and Yahuwah Elohim shall blow the trumpet, and shall go with whirlwinds of the south. Yahuwah of hosts shall defend them, and they shall devour and subdue with slingstones, and they shall drink and make a noise as through wine, and they shall be filled like bowls, and as the corners of the altar. So, Yahsharel, watch, hope, and pray in Yahuwah Elohim, because he is your hope, and he will cause you to go forth as with a giant sword and bow, and he himself shall also fight for you with manifold weapons of warfare, electrified by the eternal power of his throne. Watch, pray, and hope in Yahweh. Thank you so much for watching, family. And so the weapons of warfare were nuclear melting weapons. They were also the gun, the band of brothers against Yahsharel, and the electrified bows, and all kinds of swords and other items. Yahsharel's sword of truth in Yahushua HaMashiach, and the warfare of Yahweh are your hope. There is nothing to fear, because there is nothing new under the sun. But Yahuwah's mercies towards you are new every morning. And Yahuwah's weapons of warfare are mighty unto Yah for the pulling down of strongholds and every high and lofty thing that exalts itself above the knowledge of Yahuwah Elohim. So may Yah bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom, family. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, I pray. Please hit that like button, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Shalom. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your donations. Please like, subscribe, and share, or go to intoalltruth.net to get our appointed times calendar so you can keep the appointed times at the right time.
Let all of Yahsharel'S, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.